Okay, now if you haven't seen this video, this is the rod pocket swag that we had just made, and now we're going to be making the rod pocket jabots that are going to be going either on the same rod or on a separate rod. As an option, you can get a rod that has slightly smaller returns, that's the return right there. Then on this one has very wide returns, and you can put your jabots on this rod, or even extra swags if you wanted to. And then this one would go over it, and your jabots would peek underneath here if you'd like to, or you can just put them on the same rod. Anyhow, so we're going to get started with making the rod pocket jabots, and this is the contrast lining. And this is the face fabric, although you could switch it around either way, because it doesn't matter which side you actually use. So you have quite a few options if you want a different look. One for 6 months of the year if you wanted to, you could have it on this side, then you can flip it to the other side if you wanted a contrast. Anyhow, let's get started. So what I did, we're making our jabots 36 inches long. Let's put it this way, they'll probably end up about 35 inches roughly. I cut a 36-inch piece, 1 yard piece of the fabric, the face fabric. And I also cut a piece of the contrast lining, also the same, 36 inches. And this fabric is approximately 54 inches wide. I like using the wider fabrics that come on rolls. Then I don't really care for the ones that are folded as a rule, because they're much narrower. They're like 44 inches wide. Anyhow, I'm going to put the lining to the side for a minute. And what I'm using is half-width jabots. You don't have to. You can use full width if you like, but I'm going to use the half-width jabots. And since I don't need the selvages, I'm going to go ahead and cut the selvage right off. And I'm making a pair, obviously, so it's going to be left and right, and I'm going to make it out of a half width, as I already said. So what I'm going to do is there's two ways. I could measure down and draw a line, or I could fold it in half. I'm kind of like an advanced cutter, so this may not be something that you would want to do. But I'm just simply just going to fold it in half and cut it. Okay, now on a jabot, there's a short point and then a long point that angles down into it. This is the bottom of the material. So you have to determine what kind of angle do you want on it. And what I do is I approximate what the length of this swag is, and that's basically what I'm going to use for a short point. So in this case, the whole thing really measures around 15, 16 inches. So I'm going to go 16 plus my sewing allowance, which is 1 inch. So that'll give me 17. So over here, I'm going to put a mark at 17 inches. On the bottom here, you can come to a point. I don't really particularly care if you come to a point on the bottom. I like to use 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches. And I put a little mark at 4 inches. And then I'm going to draw my line. When you come to the bottom right here, you can actually do just a little roundness if you want. You don't have to, but it helps your sewing machine go around instead of having to stop and cut in. You just do a little curve like that. That's optional. Now when I open it up, I have a left jabot and a right jabot. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my contrast lining down on the table. This again is using 1 yard of material. This is the face of my fabric. This is my face of my fabric, and I'm going to flip it. So I have the face of the fabric on each So I'm face to face, I should say. This baby just barely fits on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pin it all in. I'm going to cut it out. And then I'm going to go and sew it all up, leaving one spot. And I'm going to leave it up at the top. This is the top. I'm going to leave a spot open here to turn it just like it did on the swag. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pin it all in. As I spoke before, I like to put my pins going in this direction rather than going in this direction. This is my preference. And actually there's a good reason for it. Sometimes you can overpin things. And not only do you overpin things, these have these little dips. Well, if you stick your pins in going this way, and you have enough little dips, it kind of feeds in the material. And you're already starting off with, a little bit of an issue. So try not to overpin. Put enough pins to hold it in place, but don't go so crazy with pins that it can actually bind the material and not make it very flexible for you to sew. Anyhow, so I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning all this in. Then I'm just going to cut this out. I'm going to sew it around a 1/2 inch, leaving a good opening about here on the very top of it, and then I'll be back. Now that we've sewn all the way around here, leaving an opening at the top, there is an alternative spot that you can leave your opening, and that would be on this long side here, which would actually return back to the wall. So that might even be a little less obvious than putting it up at the top. Just so you know. The next step is we have to turn it. We have to stick our hand in here and turn it. But before we do that, I'm going to show you one. We'll just put that one to the side for now. What we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors, and you can see where our stitch mark is. Make sure you're not cutting into your stitch mark. But what I'm going to do is cut away some of that material. Since I've used a 1/2 inch sewing allowance coming across here, all I want to do is come in to where my stitch is. There's my stitch right here, and I'm going to cut some of that material away. And the reason why I'm doing that is because when I actually turn the fabric, it doesn't all bunch up. Because right now it's in this corner it can all bunch up. So what I want to do is just kind of cut away some of that extra, and then I don't get a whole bunch of bunchiness to it. Same way on these corners right here. You just have to be careful that you're not cutting your stitch mark. But you just want to come around so when you turn it, you don't get a clump of fabric. Now I stick my hand in here. Pull it through. Great about these window treatments is they're very simple to make. And if you want to give them for presents or something, you can customize, and you know, it doesn't take you very long. I mean, making a pair of jabots like this doesn't take long at all. Just a little sewing here and there. So these are the corners that I was talking about, and you see how easy that came out? And when they don't come out all the way, you just need to take a little pin or a needle and pull them out just a little bit more, just so it has a nice curve to it. You want to do that all the way down to the bottom. But you can see by me cutting it, all I have to do is stick my hands in there, and I pretty much have gotten that out. Then you have these corners here. And then your last corner. Now they also make, or you can even make a little stick like this. And you can bring it in here to help push that fabric out if you like. Especially if it's real thick fabric. This fabric is fairly thin. It's a medium weight, I should say. So it's not too hard to get that out. Now, with that out, we want to make sure that when we press this, we're pulling this material out. And I like to start at the bottom and then work up the side. And the reason why I say to do it that way is if for some reason your sewing didn't come out great, or you had a lot of bunchiness, you can actually put that in the pocket, the extra looseness in there, if you have any. Technically you shouldn't, but you never know. You want to work it so it's as close to the edge as you can. And getting it there prior to putting heat on it is recommended. And once you feel you've got it, go ahead and give it a press. go ahead and do the long side. Like I mentioned before, it helps to have longer fingernails that you can pull that right out, but not here. My fingernails are cut pretty low. Okay, lastly is the top. And just like with the swag, I'm going to press it on this side of my opening. Then I'm going to press it on this side of the opening. Now I am going to press the opening. This time I'm going to stick a couple pins the long way that way. And then when I go back to the sewing machine, I'm just going to put a little stitch across here to hold that. Now I'm going to go ahead and press the other one, and then we'll show you how to put the heading and pocket in. Now we're back at the sewing machine, and it's all pressed. It's all ready. Now all we have to do is we have to close this up and then put our 1.5" heading and 1.5" pocket. Now it depends on the heading whether you need one or not, depending on how you're hanging this. If this jabot is going behind the swag, you may not want to have a heading. Because then you'd have a heading on your swag and then a heading on a jabot, which might peek over the swag. So another option would be just to put a pocket in this, opposed to both. Just keep that in mind. But if you're going to put it next to the swag on the same rod, then you're going to want to put a heading on this also. Now getting back to this opening, you have two options on this. You can just close this up, or you can run your stitch from the very top and go all the way so it all matches. That's going to be totally up to you. And this is just a sample. And I'm just going to elect just to close this up. And you want it to as close to the top as you can. But you want to make sure you're catching both the lining and the fabric. Face fabric, I should say. Now it's time to put the heading in and then the pocket. And as I had went over doing the swag, you kind of want to put the heading in first. It's the stitch that's going to be closest to the edge, opposed to coming all the way over and putting the bottom of the pocket in, where things can shift. And to do that, we're going to use our magnet. Now, if your sewing machine doesn't have metal up here, you can also take a ruler and just put a little mark where you're sewing, and then you can always tape down that ruler or an additional ruler. But I'm putting an 1.5" pocket in, so I'm going to measure from my needle to where the fabric has to be. And there's my 1.5 inches, and I'm going to use this as a guideline as I'm stitching. So I'm just going to butt that just the same way I did with the rod pocket swag. This also works if you're making any type of rod pocket, drapery or valance. It's just easier to use a magnet or some type of a ruler there. In this case, I'm putting a little stretch on I'm not just letting the machine do the work. I'm putting my hand here and in front of it. And I'm kind of stretching the material so it doesn't bunch. So there is my heading. Now since I have an 1.5 inch heading and an 1.5 inch pocket, that means that I have to go out 3 inches from my next stitch. And also keep in mind, I didn't do it on this one, but since this is a contrast color, your bobbin should be, the thread on your bobbin should be matching this color, and the thread on your machine should be matching the face color. Just so you know, that's what you'd normally do in this case. Especially if you may want to flip the Jabots over to the other side at some point, or the swag. It's good to have matching colors. Now the last step is to open up the hem. Now I could have left this open prior to sewing it. I don't care to do that. I mean, you can. I don't care to do it only because it's extra time and it's no big problem opening this up afterwards. And all I do, just like I did, and this doesn't have to be, you can use a seam ripper too. But I just stick my my scissor in there and just kind of stab at the thread, and then until I get it. And then once I've got it, there it is right there, then I can clip it. Just be careful you don't cut the material. And just like with the swag, you have the option if you want to come in here and just sew this down and then sew it separately. I'm not going to bother, only because this is just a sample for you guys, not even for me. You know what I'm going to do with this? I'm going to throw it away when I'm done. So there you have it. Both sides are open. Now we're going to go back on the table, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this on a rod so we can see what it looks like. Okay, so there's our pair of Jabots. And we're going to go ahead and place these right on the rod. And these Jabots are going to want to spring back a little bit, and that's okay. So this is just one option for you when you put it on your wall. Is you can have this rod first, and then because of this rod being having a higher projection, this one will fit right over it. And I'm sorry I can't put this on a wall for you, but this is what you would have when you're done. Let me tilt that a little bit, get a little better look at it. There you go. Very simple, very easy to do. You could do a whole set in a day. I mean, not just this set. I mean, you could do several sets in a day because it's so easy to do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you later.